Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back again, your host, Saheem the Dream, coming at you guys with another video. Um, I was on social media the other day, just kind of going through the Universal, WWE Universal Heavyweight Champions, all the people who held on to the title, and I seen the Fiend. I seen Bray Wyatt's character, former character, RIP Bray Wyatt. And I was sitting there just thinking about his character and just how he was, booked throughout his career because he held on to the Universal title in the amount of two times. His first time was 118 days. His second time was 6 days. 6 damn days he held on to the Universal title. This great character, The Fiend, was marked out by Vince McMahon for the sake of Roman Reigns. The benefit of what came out of Roman Reigns winning the title was actually a great thing. But the thing that I'm thinking about is just pretty much the booking decisions that went behind the Fiend's character. And I couldn't help but think about a bunch of characters that were just like the Fiend who were really booked very poorly by Vince McMahon. I couldn't help but think about all the other performers that suffered that same fate of Vince McMahon's poor booking decisions because he simply just couldn't get them or he just didn't want to use them anymore. Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about 7 performers that Vince McMahon, or should I say 7 amazing performers that Vince McMahon completely ruined. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Wrestling in the ring, thoughts that always bring. Talking all about the moves and our grooves. Wrestling talks and thoughts we never forgot. Slamming down the truth in our booth. Conversations in the air with flair and care. Legends of the past, memories that last. Wrestling talks and thoughts, connecting the dots. From high flyer to submissions, we make our missions. From Raw to SmackDown, we wear the crown. NXT to AEW, we bring the view. Wrestling talks and thoughts in our slots. Fans united, always excited. Wrestling talks and thoughts in our spots.
All right, so coming in number 7, I have Shayna Baszler as being a character that Vince McMahon has ruined. She came up from the NXT developmental brand. She was handed over to Vinnie Mac himself, and she was booked in NXT to be one of the most unstoppable, and at the time, an unstoppable performer. She actually held on to the women's title, NXT women's title, in the amount of 2 times. Her first reign was 132 days. Her second reign was 416 days. Combined, she has 548 days, making her the longest combined NXT WWE champion in WWE history. She has made history. She was booked very strong as a solid performer, one of those unstoppable forces. We thought that when she went up to the main roster that Vince will handle her right and understand the whole point behind her character, being this killer, being this woman who was somewhat of a bloodthirsty shark, that whenever she seen a weakness, she capitalized on it and she was able to crush her opponent at any given moment in the ring. Unfortunately, Vince McMahon did not see this vision and did not believe in Shayna as a performer. I don't know why. It makes no sense to me when Shawn Michaels and Triple H gave Vince the mean alley-oop from NXT. Shayna Baszler will go on to have a magnificent performance at Elimination Chamber 2020. If you guys have not seen Elimination Chamber 2020, I definitely recommend you guys go see it. That is one of my favorite Elimination Chamber matches, to watch Shayna Baszler just completely run through everybody in that match and dominate them. It's pretty much ranked as maybe my top 3 Elimination Chamber matches of all times, but it's definitely one of my favorites. So if you have not seen it, I definitely recommend you go see it. Unfortunately, she will go on to WrestleMania to fight Becky Lynch and lose because Vince McMahon felt like he didn't really get a character. He said he didn't get her. Becky Lynch actually advocated for Shayna Baszler beating her at WrestleMania so she can take time off to become a brand new mom. She was actually pregnant, and Vince McMahon said, nope, I won't have it. I want you to hold on to that title and give it to someone else that I think would be a better fit, and he thought that person was actually Asuka. Asuka would be the person to pick up the title in 2020 at Money in the Bank. After Asuka wins the Money in the Bank women's ladder match, she was actually gifted the title in the briefcase, not a contract, because Becky Lynch had to forfeit the title. Shayna Baszler will go on to have a series of matches. A lot of them she would lose. I wouldn't say a lot, but she would pretty much kind of like not really have as much of a great appeal as she had in NXT, as she would have on the roster. What she had in NXT was a great monumental run. Vince McMahon, because of his lack of understanding with certain characters, I don't know why, when he's built so many great characters over the years, or helped establish a lot of great characters over the years, didn't understand Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler will go on to win the Women's Tag Team Championship. I believe it was 2 or 3 times, and she would not win any other singles title after that. She would not actually get the same momentum and push in the duration of her career. And actually, it's been about maybe 3 or 4 months, and I have not seen her on TV as we are coming into WrestleMania season. Hopefully they give Shayna that same push. I actually met her one time in the airport. But coming in at number 6, I have the Fiend. Fiend. Coming in number 6, I have the Fiend. That's probably where Travis Scott got the idea of the song from. Travis Scott, you owe WWE some checks, mother. All right. Anyway, I have the Fiend. Now, I put the Fiend on this list because he debuted in 2019 against Finn Balor at SummerSlam, which would, in our minds, set up a potential dream match of seeing the Demon and the Fiend face off sometime at a future SummerSlam or WrestleMania. Unfortunately, due to Bray Wyatt's passing, we were not able to get that match, or we're not able to get that match. So the closest we can never get to a fantasy booking such as that is WWE 2K games. It was definitely a dream match that a lot of us fans pretty much hoped for. Even the likes of the Fiend facing off against the Undertaker at a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam. Another dream match that we pretty much hoped for, but unfortunately we're not able to get. The Fiend being booked as this nightmarish like creature. He was supposed to be the manifestation of his enemy's worst nightmares personified in human flesh. That's who the Fiend was supposed to be, like the manifestation of your worst nightmare confronting you. And that's who the Fiend was. A great character, awesome character. Everybody loved the Fiend, like how Demon Balor comes out when Finn wants to call on a demon. You had the Fiend when Bray Wyatt wanted to call on the Fiend to bring a person's worst nightmares personified in human flesh before their eyes. We had the Fiend. And Vince McMahon, we thought, got this character. Bray Wyatt was able to do the Firefly Funhouse. He was able to bring out all these quirky characters, give us this sort of like Mr. Rogers, like, background and cast of little puppet characters, and then give us this nightmarish creature that manifests, because of course, a lot of kids deal with nightmares, and a lot of kids are afraid of nightmares, and that's who the Fiend was. He was a walking, living, breathing nightmare. And we thought Vince McMahon understood the purpose of this character, but Vince McMahon did not. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this video, that the Fiend had won 2 Universal titles. We're fortunate enough to have the Fiend actually win those 2 titles, but there will be a lot of poor booking decisions upon his road to receiving the Universal title. He actually held on to the title twice. One of the length of his reigns was 118 days. As I said before, his second reign was 6 damn days. 6 damn days. 6 days, which was, in my opinion, terrible. So Vince McMahon decided that he wanted to cut the Fiend's reign short by having him lose the title to the likes of Goldberg. Man, Goldberg gets a lot of heat. Anyway, Vince McMahon thought it was a great idea to have Goldberg take the title off of the Fiend at Crown Jewel. Why? I don't know. But for some reason, Vince thought that that was a great idea, just to have Goldberg carry the belt for about a month to lose the belt to Braun Strowman, when The Fiend could have just held on to the title, beating the likes of Goldberg, solidifying his nightmarish, unstoppable strength and character, beating the likes of Braun Strowman, or potentially having Braun Strowman take the title off of The Fiend, because Braun Strowman being a big, strong, brawly performer. But not only that, but Braun Strowman being someone who was once close to Bray Wyatt, being a person who would know how to take down The Fiend, which would have made more sense for the story, but not in Vince's eyes, because that's not what Vince thought was a good idea. He said, I'm going to get Goldberg out of retirement, and Goldberg is going to take the title off of The Fiend, the person that all the fans love and like, and you built up for all this time to be a great character and a great performer. But Goldberg was the answer to defeating The Fiend, and he was the person to actually defeat The Fiend, the first person to defeat The Fiend. The Fiend would go on to beat Braun Strowman for the title and regain the title, but only hold on to the title for the amount of 6 days, losing the belt to Roman Reigns, returning from beating and defeating Lupus. Now, as far as booking decisions, again, The Fiend would face a lot of poor booking decisions. One of those poor booking decisions would come at the expense of him actually having one of the worst Hell in a Cell matches in WWE history. A lot of fans kind of deem that the worst Hell in a Cell match in WWE history. It was terrible. It was all red. That was the idea. And not that it was all red, but it was just that Seth Rollins would defeat The Fiend. He wouldn't necessarily defeat The Fiend, but he would actually walk out of that match, Hell in a Cell match, where there is no disqualification, where there is no holds barred rules, and the match would be deemed a disqualification. Something weird. Like, it was very weird. It was like this weird rule of like deemed not being able to compete. So therefore, Seth Rollins, the Fiend was deemed not being able to continue to compete because Seth Rollins was throwing everything at him, even the kitchen sink, in order to defeat him. And he would actually win the match because The Fiend could not continue to compete in a Hell in a Cell match. Instead of just being pinned 1, 2, 3, they came up with some stupid, rule in a Hell in a Cell match, which actually has, no DQ rules and all this other stuff. It was bananas. Anyway, and that was during Seth Rollins, when he was, stomping on the floor, doing the whole burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. Like, sort of like Shawn Michaels when he did the Sweet Chin Music, but instead it was Seth Rollins, burn it down version. The burn it down, burn it down, burn it down. Anyway, fans didn't like it, and that's when Seth Rollins was on that terrible Universal title run after beating Brock Lesnar in such terrible fashion. That was a terrible WrestleMania match that Seth had. Seth doesn't really have a lot of bad matches. He's had a few, but that was definitely one of his worst years in wrestling. 2019 wasn't really a good year for Seth Rollins, even though they were trying to book him to do more. But anyway, it seemed like Vince McMahon was back on the road of booking The Fiend properly, but unfortunately we would lose Bray Wyatt August 24th, 2023. RIP Bray. I thought nobody was ready for Asuka coming in at number 5. Undefeated streak. Coming in at number 5, we have Asuka. She had an undefeated streak that lasted for 914 days. 914 days coming off of the NXT roster. She started in NXT in September of 2015, all the way up to 2019 when she joined the WWE. 2018 when she joined the WWE roster. She will go on to fight Charlotte Flair and lose at WrestleMania, when we thought that she was going to actually win. We thought she was going to have a triumphant victory against Charlotte Flair, but Vince McMahon decided that the person that would stop Asuka's undefeated streak would be Charlotte Flair. And when you kind of think about the story, it's a bittersweet thing, right? It's a great story in the likes of you're watching this performer come in to the developmental brand of WWE. She starts out winning all her matches all the way up until she wins the NXT Women's title, relinquishes the title because she's going to the main roster. Then when she gets to the main roster, she's still undefeated, and everybody has all this hope and expectation that she's going to go on to WrestleMania and she's going to beat Charlotte Flair. But no, it's not what happened. She does not beat Charlotte Flair. She actually loses to Charlotte Flair, and then later on winds up capturing her first women's world title. That was one of the bittersweet situations of the story, because it's a interesting story to tell how Asuka went from undefeated to going to the big show and then losing the big show. It's like she won everything, and then when she finally gets to the top of the mountain, she actually blows it. But then eventually she wins. It sucks that, she had to lose. Like, she could have been booked a whole lot better than how she was booked. Vince McMahon definitely dropped the ball with Asuka when it came to her undefeated streak. I thought nobody was ready for Asuka, but apparently Vince McMahon was ready for Asuka, and he had the queen who would be the person to do his dirty work in defeating Asuka and tarnishing one of the greatest runs in WWE history. But let's move on again. So coming in at number 4, I have Goldberg, who would be a unstoppable force or be one of those larger than life characters that was actually built in WCW to be unstoppable and unbeatable. This roided up machine-like man. You didn't know whether he was human or whether he was an android sent from the future to beat the hell out of your favorite superstars. Goldberg was built as this unstoppable force in WCW, racking up 173 wins in his career, going on to beat the likes of Hulk Hogan, who was the leader of the NWO on a July 1998 episode of Nitro. He actually wound up coming over to WWE because WCW was brought out by WWE. Ted Turner said, "I don't care about wrestling anymore," and he just said, "F it." And you have Goldberg, who officially made his debut in WWE, having his first match against The Rock at a Backlash where he would defeat The Rock, setting Goldberg back on that same path of being that unstoppable force who's able to run through and crush your favorite superstars. The Rock was my favorite, or The Rock is my favorite wrestler of all time, so you know how I felt when he lost to Goldberg. But Goldberg is actually one of my favorite wrestlers of all times, believe it or not. I know some of you guys, have this thing against Goldberg, and you guys feel like he's a terrible wrestler. Trust me, if you go back, watch some of his old wrestling matches in WCW, he had a lot of great matches. It's just when you look at how he was booked to be this strong wrestler, and you look at his moveset, he had a lot of great moves, and the way he would put his moves on his opponents. Yes, they were a little bit stiff. Yes, his opponents sometimes complain about his wrestling, but again, he was very effective and he was really good at what he did. I love Goldberg, and a lot of wrestling fans, like those stronger guys, which is the reason why Brock Lesnar is fairly popular, because he's this really big, unstoppable force in real life, in WWE, in the fantasy world, and in UFC, in the real world, right? So, back to Goldberg. When we look at Goldberg being this larger than life character coming over to WWE, he was booked really well in the beginning. Then came Elimination Chamber. Elimination Chamber is where a lot of the air was blown out of Goldberg's balloon. Pause. At SummerSlam in 2003 is where Goldberg will have his opportunity to have his first crack at a world championship match. Now, remember when I mentioned a magnificent performance that Shayna Baszler had at the Elimination Chamber, where she just pretty much ran through the whole roster, and it was just like crazy how she had this great performance and then she would go on to eventually lose. Well, the same thing kind of happened to Goldberg, but a little bit more the opposite. Well, Goldberg would have this magnificent performance in SummerSlam of 2003 to go on to lose the Elimination Chamber, but then eventually win the world title. So it's sort of like, kind of in reverse, right? He would have this magnificent performance in this Elimination Chamber match. If you guys have not seen SummerSlam 2003, where the Elimination Chamber match happened with Goldberg, Randy Orton, Triple H, Jericho, Shawn Michaels, and Kevin Nash, I definitely and highly recommend you watch that match. That is by far probably top 3, or even say top 2 Elimination Chamber matches of all time. In my opinion, I think it should be up there as number 1 or maybe number 2, but definitely my favorite, or one of my favorite Elimination Chamber matches of all time. That match was everything it was supposed to be as far as what you expected from Goldberg. However, when you see how it ended with Triple H getting the better of Goldberg, it actually ended the way it was supposed to end, with Goldberg and Triple H actually having their first in-ring encounter. And that's the first time Triple H and Goldberg would have their first in-ring encounter on TV that we know of. And knowing the history of Triple H being the game, you're just not going to come in, regardless of who you are, and just beat Triple H like that, because that's who his character was. It was the game. He was the smartest in the game. He was the dirtiest player in the game. He was the slickest in the game. He was the smoothest in the game. He is the game, and he will find your weakness and he will crush it, because he is the game and he came to play. Goldberg was booked strong. Like, he was winning most of his matches, right? Don't get me wrong, but Goldberg was not set back on that same streak that he had in WCW. I felt like if they would have started another win streak with Goldberg in WWE and had somebody like the likes of Triple H, had somebody like the likes of maybe Brock Lesnar, had somebody like the likes of, I don't know, like Randy Orton, but someone who you would not mind seeing them win, or somebody you expect to get the upper hand on Goldberg, break the streak, it would have made a little bit more sense for his character. Goldberg would later go on to have a series of matches that would be quite questionable by the WWE universe. One of those matches is that Crown Jewel match that I mentioned, with him actually beating The Fiend. Don't blame Goldberg. Blame Vince McMahon. This whole video is based on Vince McMahon's terrible booking decisions. And one of those terrible booking decisions was having Goldberg beat The Fiend at Crown Jewel. Terrible decision. Coming in at number 3, we have the Dead Man. Speaking of undefeated streaks, we have the Dead Man, and that man is Undertaker. Undertaker had that undefeated streak at WrestleMania. That's when that Goldberg and Undertaker match, in my opinion, started to feel more like a fantasy booking. Like, if we looked at the American Badass Undertaker going against Goldberg, like I wouldn't care about that, right? When we started to look at the Undertaker, when he was that like mainstay guy in the early 2000s, when Teddy Long was booking him as that guy of tonight you'll be taking on the Undertaker, like when he was being booked as that guy, like that's when I began to look at Undertaker as being that guy I would love to see stand across the ring from Goldberg, right? But other than that, prior to that, Undertaker to me was just always booked as a big guy, a big powerhouse who is a mainstay, who can give you a great performance at any given time, but not really in the likes of me wanting to see him go against Goldberg. But anyway, as far as booking decisions are concerned, this is where I begin to kind of break down, like, the whole poor booking decision with Goldberg and Undertaker. They had a Crown Jewel match, and it was terrible. Not unwatchable terrible, but just over the hill terrible. Like, you can tell that it was time for Goldberg to retire. Him trying to do a jackhammer was terrible. The funny thing about that match was that Goldberg was actually booked to win the match. Goldberg was supposed to beat The Undertaker, but because Goldberg suffered a concussion from actually missing the spear and hitting his head against the ring post, Undertaker had to beat him because Goldberg couldn't continue. I mean, he was trying to continue, but Goldberg said after he hit his head against the post, he don't remember anything about the match. Goldberg said after hitting his head against the post, he doesn't remember anything about the match. I found that to be completely hilarious. It was funny to me. It's the funniest thing in the world. So the Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak, a series of 21 consecutive victories, was broken by Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30 in 2014. At that WrestleMania, when Brock Lesnar broke the Undertaker's undefeated streak, I felt so disgusted because I had brought into this pivotal match of watching the Undertaker keep his undefeated streak. And from what was said, and the rumor was that Edge was one of the first people to be propositioned for breaking the streak. Actually, fun fact is that before Edge was actually propositioned to break the streak, it was actually Randy Orton who was propositioned to break the undefeated streak at WrestleMania. And Randy Orton said no, he wouldn't do it. Randy said he wouldn't do it, and then it went on to Edge, who said he wouldn't do it, and Batista, and all these other performers that said they wouldn't break the streak because they felt like it was something that they owed to Undertaker being someone that was loyal. But Vince McMahon said, I'm going to ask Brock Lesnar. And what did Brock Lesnar say? And Brock was like, hell yeah. And Brock broke the streak, and that's what we have is an undefeated streak that was broken at WrestleMania. And the thing about the streak is like an undefeated streak of this guy who is able to be undefeated at winning the big show. That's what made the undefeated streak at WrestleMania so special and so different. It was like this guy will always come to the big show and win, regardless of how the card is stacked against him. No matter what, no matter who it is, he will always win. But unfortunately, if it's stacked against him, going against Brock Lesnar, he ain't winning. If it's stacked against him, going against Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon, he ain't winning. So that's what happened. Is Vince McMahon decided to end the streak. I felt like it was a poor decision because Undertaker would go on to beat the likes of John Cena and Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania. He would lose to Roman Reigns. I believe a year over, he would lose to Roman Reigns. So Undertaker would only suffer 2 losses at WrestleMania, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, but then beat everyone else. His last match, he wins against AJ Styles. And Vince McMahon will go on record to say that streaks are meant to be broken. I think one of the reasons why Vince McMahon decided to break that streak at WrestleMania, because he didn't want that match to overshadow the main event or his top guy or even the heavyweight title, because when the streak started to become popular was when, I believe it was either when he faced Edge or when he faced Shawn Michaels. I believe it's when he faced Shawn Michaels and he ended Shawn Michaels' career. That's when the streak became like this really big thing. Like, we knew about the streak. It was publicized, but it wasn't as big as it was until he actually ended someone's career at a WrestleMania. So, I mean, what better way than to make the streak get more notoriety than to end one of the greatest in-ring performances career at WrestleMania. So when Vince McMahon decided that he wanted to end that streak, one decision I could understand why he could have ended the streak, but then another one I felt like it was dumb because that's something that fans would be counting on at WrestleMania as a great card match to look forward to, right? If the main event doesn't live up to the hype, if the Intercontinental title match doesn't live up to the hype, the tag team championship match doesn't live up to the hype, or whatever top match you have doesn't live up to the hype, you always have the streak to look forward to. That's something on a card that fans can sink their teeth into and just say like, hey, listen, this didn't happen, but that happened, and I'm glad this happened or this continued. I felt like The Undertaker should have retired 30-0 as being an undefeated performer at WrestleMania and to go down as one of the greatest WrestleMania performers of all times. I still think that Undertaker is one of the greatest WrestleMania performers of all time, especially him having his series of matches with Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Edge, Batista, and all the other great matches he had as well. I actually enjoyed his squash match against John Cena. I loved it. Not because I'm a John Cena hater. I just thought it was a great match. So in this number 2 slot, I have Sting. Right now, Sting is not an undefeated character. He was never booked to be undefeated. Sting has lost some matches in WCW. And WCW has suffered a lot of good booking and suffered a lot of bad booking. And when he came to WWE, a lot of fans expected a dream match would finally come true of seeing Sting go against your favorite WrestleMania or one of your favorite WrestleMania performers, The Undertaker. And we just got finished talking about The Undertaker. We thought that if Sting was to show up at WrestleMania, that we would have Sting versus The Undertaker. Nope, that's not what we got. We got Sting versus Triple H. Now, granted, Sting versus Triple H is a dream match, but not at WrestleMania. Me being a heavy Triple H fan, me also being a heavy Sting fan, me just being a wrestling fan altogether knows that was just a terrible decision. As much as I love Triple H, as much as I love Sting, but let me just go back on what I'm saying about Triple H and just Vince McMahon making this poor booking decision and not just putting his foot down and saying, you know what, I'm not going to make this decision. But the reality is that's the decision Vince McMahon made to decide to have Triple H go against Sting. Now, this booking decision does not fall on Triple H. Please, guys, I've seen people try to blame Triple H for this decision. And when you think about it, sometimes performers take on matches that they even disagree with, but they just go and they do what they're told because it's their job. And you have to play a role on the team. You have to do what's asked of you. We had an interview a while back with Just Incredible, and we spoke to him about just how the booking is made and how the booking decisions are determined, and as far as how they come up with these decisions on how they choose certain people to win certain matches and how your character is being chosen. And he said to us, he says, if you're lucky enough to get the opportunity to actually add creative concepts to your character, he said that comes with time and it comes with trust. So when I look at Sting coming into WWE, I believe that was completely a Vince McMahon decision to book Sting in that capacity. It was a terrible booking decision. I put Sting on this list because, again, Sting could have had that match against Undertaker, and in hindsight, if we would have known that injury would have put Sting out for that amount of time, him suffering that concussion would have put him out for that amount of time that old Seth Rollins done caused, Mr. Burn It Down himself, then we would have been okay with Sting being out. We would have at least had that match of Sting versus The Undertaker. One of those great matches that could have happened but never happened. Why? I don't know. I'm sorry, I do know. It's Vince's terrible booking decisions. Speaking of terrible booking decisions and unfulfilled fantasy matches and unfulfilled potential that Vince McMahon has squashed under his power-hungry iron fist, that leads me to number 1 with heartbreak and frustration. And that is coming in at number 1, we have the Demon, Finn Balor. Now, I put Finn Balor at number 1 for multiple reasons. And it's annoying to even have Finn Balor's character, the Demon, at the top of this list because of the unlimited potential that was there I mean, like right there for all the great opportunities that Vince McMahon could have capitalized on so many different moments. One of the great moments that they did capitalize on was the actual demon character being introduced to everybody, where he would win at SummerSlam and win the Universal title against Seth Rollins in a tournament that they had put on throughout the month to determine who would be the first Universal Champion. And that person was Finn Balor, and he won as the Demon. Back to Seth Rollins injuring performers. He injured Finn Balor at that SummerSlam, dislocating his shoulder. And Finn Balor would have to relinquish the title the next night, which pissed me off because I wasn't familiar with Finn Balor at that moment. But I was so mad because I was just like excited to see what was he going to do. Seth Rollins injures Finn Balor, and we don't get to see what could have became of Finn Balor's run as being the Demon. I think that if Finn Balor would have held on to that championship, we would have gotten something special and something different. And we would have definitely see an emergence of one of the greatest characters developed as far as the Demon. Finn Balor didn't introduce the Demon in New Japan Pro Wrestling when he was Prince Devitt. He actually debuted the character in NXT. He wore the paint in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he actually debuted the Demon character in NXT during NXT TakeOver Revolution event in 2014. So what we seen in New Japan Pro Wrestling was him just trying new things with his character. And when he came to NXT, he just said, you know what? Let me do a Jekyll and Hyde thing. Like, you're going to have Finn Balor, the performer, but when he needs to tap into something a little bit more stronger in order to give him strength and power, he's going to tap into the Demon character. And that's what we got the flip side. So you can see how Bray Wyatt drew a lot of inspiration from Finn Balor being the Fiend, because you had Bray Wyatt, the performer, and then you had the Fiend, which was a great mystique to add to his character. Like, it added such a great layer to his character. Now, this Demon character, Finn Balor would only pull out on special occasions, and that's what I liked about his character. It was a specialty character. So with Finn Balor's run with the character, there's two matches that definitely stand out to me. One of those matches he should have had, and then one of those matches he should have never had. The first match that I'm speaking about that he had, that I didn't mind him having, but I hated the outcome, was him wrestling Edge at WrestleMania 39 in a Hell in a Cell match. Everybody thought that Finn was going to go over. He was the Demon. He tapped into his Demon persona. And here's Edge tapping into his Edge Brood persona. We get Brood Edge. Oh, we get Brood Edge. I'm so intimidated by Brood Edge. Brood Edge ain't never win a singles title ever in his life. But apparently, Brood Edge is strong enough at this point in time in history to face Demon Balor. So I guess, Edge had to tap into his Brood persona that we really didn't care about, or didn't really win him any big victories other than the tag title. And I think he probably held on to the tag titles with the Brood maybe like twice. But anyway, this Brood Edge was, he comes out with his little red leather jacket and with his little glasses, because he's the Brood Edge, and he's gonna beat Finn Balor, the Demon, which was a terrible decision. This was Vince McMahon's idea. Granted, I will say this, Edge's entrance was fire. It was fire. The match was still good. It was a good match. If you guys want to check it out, it's still a great match. Finn Balor should have won. The reason why Demon Balor lost was because Vince McMahon decided, he wanted Edge to win. That was Vince McMahon's decision. Nothing was attached to it. There was no reason why he wanted the Demon to lose. There was no reason why he felt like Edge should win. He just thought that Edge should win. The sad part about this match is that when Edge wins, there's no momentum that comes after Edge winning this match. Like, he doesn't go on to actually win a title, but what would actually transpire after Edge winning against Demon Balor, I believe a few months from that time, retired from WWE. So that match became absolutely pointless and made no sense at all whatsoever. Why did Vince decide to do that? I don't know. I'm quite sure he was probably kicking himself when he made that stupid decision. Another decision that they made with a demon character was to have Roman Reigns beat the demon at Extreme Rules. So it kind of does make a little bit more sense with Roman Reigns being actually able to beat the demon, because Roman Reigns beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. See, and this is the thing about the booking decision that Vince would have. It was like these guys would be booked to be very strong and get to these pivotal moments where all the fans are behind them and they're believing in them, to see some consistency in their victories or consistency in their booking, and then Vince just hits you with a crazy swerve. This victory that Roman Reigns got over the demon character was in lieu to kind of really build onto Roman Reigns' tribal chief character to make him look stronger. So Roman Reigns beating the demon character just made Roman look stronger. And it worked. It worked. But what I can say about Roman Reigns getting the victory over the demon was that Roman Reigns will go on to have a 2.5-year run with the Universal title and winning the World Heavyweight Championship against Brock Lesnar. So it's not like that victory didn't contribute to anything. And that's my point about how Vince McMahon was just pretty much booking some of these matches when it comes to these larger-than-life characters, was that when some of these guys would lose or they would fall victim to some of their opponents, the person that they would actually lose to wouldn't really have any real steam behind them, going forward once they actually got this like monumental victory, So these are like, 7 amazing characters that were built up to be larger than life characters, and Vince McMahon pretty much ruined with his terrible booking decisions. All right. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I will be back with you guys with another weekly upload talking about more wrestling things and content. I will catch you guys later in the next video. Peace.